Alright, what's popping, guys and guys? Just back in for another video. So today I want to talk about the ego. Okay, the ego. Alright? The ego is, like, it's a part of you, okay? And a lot of people say that you can kill it. You can't necessarily kill the ego. You can't. You can't get rid of the ego completely. You can let it go by, like, ignoring it, but it's going to be a part of you that always exists. Always exists. Because that's just what human beings are in this life, right? You're not born with it, but you're programmed it, and you can't escape it because everything you see at these eyes is programming, right? But there's a certain, you can use the ego to your advantage sometimes. You don't want to operate as like on the ego, like as like being a person, like being yourself as the ego. Don't do that. Don't do that. You should operate from the heart and from like a loving place, right? And like be like operate like as your soul, as your higher self, right? That's how I see it, right? But there's a lot of people in the world that like to operate on the ego, and it can be like for many things. Like there's like, there's one thing I learned like this year about the ego is that like you can't get rid of it if you're playing sports. Like, I'm just saying, like, I played sports, and I know other people that played sports. The ego is it plays a huge factor in sports. It does. So, you can't, like, as long as you're aware of that, right? But some people aren't, right? But, you can use your ego to your advantage when you're playing sports, say, for an example, right? Like, Kobe and Shaq, right? They're playing on the Lakers, right? Two alpha males and two guys that are just ego driven. Like, it's not gonna work like with them being teammates. It did for a couple years, but they started to hate each other because their egos are just both so high, and they're just like, I'm better than you. No, I'm better than you. No, I'm better than you. No, I'm like, the ego. The ego can be it can be evil in some ways. It depends how you view it as, right? So you can use it for your advantage to get out of situations. Just being around certain people, like to get away from them. So the ego can help, but you have to be aware of the ego itself. If you're not, and you're being yourself as the ego, then I can't stand those people. And I shouldn't say that as I'm being a face ass, because I was, like, last year I was a pretty egotistic guy. Like, I operated on my ego nonstop. Nonstop. Like 24/7. My friends hated it. They couldn't stand it. I tried to let it go at the start of my spirituality, but it was still exist. It still existed. So I had to really work on it. And when I found my higher self, that's when it started to go away. But the ego is something that you can't get rid of. It can't die, and it's not necessarily evil unless you let it be. But you have to be aware of the ego itself, because a lot of people have big egos, and that's how they are. Like, I know a lot of I shouldn't name, like, I'm saying this right now, like women, like for example, they have big egos. That's just because of the society we are in right now with social media, getting all this validation and all this attention on Instagram or whatever, right? Their egos are just through the roof, right? But for guys, it's like sports and other stuff, and just being a little cocky little prick. Like, that's what I see as as the ego for a guy. And a girl, I'm gonna keep that quiet, all right? Because I have my opinions, and that is what it is. With people that operate their ego, I can't stand those people. They drive me nuts. Even though I used to be like that, it drives me nuts because it's like a reflection of my old self, kind of. But now that I'm with my higher self, I see it. I realize how, like, bad it is. And when you operate on the ego, man, like, you're much more negative, because you don't get shit that you want, right? Something that you don't want to see happening, and it happens, it just drives your ego nuts, right? Or like if someone chirps you, for an example, or like throws some like negativity your way, and right away, if you're operating on the ego is going to go on a defensive state, and it's going to want to like snap and chirp back, and now it's at like who can talk the most shit better. That's what it comes down to with the ego for that, right? If you're operating on the ego and someone's running their mouth, me as my higher self, if someone's running their mouth, I'm just gonna let it go and ignore it. I just know, I just think in my brain, look at my growth and look at yours. I'm way ahead of you. And that does sound ego right there. That does sound ego right there. But you see how I'm using it as a friendly way to myself. I'm not damaging myself as I'm coming off as a negative person with the ego. If I wasn't aware of it, right? But I am aware of it, so I just let it go. So that's the thing, right? That's the thing. And with sports being a thing, like, you kind of have to, like, I know, but like, you have to be like, once you're done with the sports, you have to let it go and drop it, right? Because eventually, use it to your advantage, use it as your confidence, right? For like basketball, for an example, right? Like shooting and stuff like that, you can use your ego for that. But when you're off the court, or when you're done playing the sport that you're playing, right? You let it go. You go back to being yourself. It's like kind of like having two personalities, kind of. It's kind of like that, but you can use it to your advantage, man, if you're aware of it, right? But if you're not, you're gonna fall victim to a lot of negativity, victim to a lot of I feel like if you operate on your ego, you're not gonna, I wouldn't say you hate yourself, but you're not gonna like your life, I'd say. And maybe I'm wrong, but that's just what it was for me in the past, right? Like being an ego, I liked my life back in the past. I'm not saying that, right? But with having an ego, right, and being operating on the ego, but just the way I portrayed myself, and the way, like, I set myself up to eventually to my downfall, and then I had to boost my back up. And that was because I was operating on the ego. So I don't want people to make that same mistake, but just be aware of the ego, man. Be aware of it, know what it is, and just know it's not necessarily evil. You can't escape it. You're being programmed every single day by these eyes, TV, just watching TV, reading a book, like meditating, sleeping, like having everything's programmed, okay? Everything is programming. And that's creating the ego right there. As soon as you have eyes as a human being, when you come out of the womb, and your soul's in your body, it is program time. It is program time. Your brain is on a program right now, 24/7, and that's what creates the ego right there. And everybody has an ego, but you don't want it to get to a certain point where it's just too high to the point. Right now, I keep my ego shush. It's quiet, and I'm with my higher self 24/7, because that's what I'm supposed to operate as. That's how I like it too. I like operating as my higher self, and because it makes me feel like I'm my true self all the time. If I was getting stoned out of my mind, smoking dope and all that, I operated on the ego 100%, like non-stop. My ego was so huge when I was high. It was bad. And like just playing sports too, like all this other stuff. But there's certain points when you have to have the ego come in there, right? So use it as your friend. Use it as a buddy. Okay? So that's my advice right there. That's the ego. That's what I see with the ego. It's not evil. It's just how you let it be. How you want it to be. Don't operate and don't be the ego. Be the soul, right? Be the heart. Operate from love, and not with the ego. Less hate with people operating on with people operating the ego. There's more hate in the world. That's just what I think, right? That's what I see. You can look through history and like just the society. Like that's how it works, man. If people are ego driven, it could be bad. Or say like I become rich, right? My ego can go through the roof, right? Or if I get like, I remember this too. I remember this. Hold on, I'll tell you a story. I got a haircut, right? I got a fresh haircut. You can see how it's like my ego right now is kind of like wanting to come out right now, but I feel good about myself, right? So, but I got a fresh haircut, man. Just a fresh haircut. Everything. I didn't look like a bum anymore. I looked like a homeless person. I felt good, man. It gave me like a huge ego booster. I was looking in the mirror and I was like, man, I want to smash myself. I want to have, like, that's what it felt like. Oh, I was looking at my damn self in the mirror. I was like, holy shit, man. Like, that's an ego right there, right? That's the ego, right? but I didn't go out in public and like just like express myself as the ego, right? Like, oh, I'm prettier than you. Oh, I'm this and that. I'm more fly. I'm the highest. Like, you know, I didn't brag about myself like that. I just let it go, stayed with my true self, kept it real with myself, and voila. But the ego is always gonna want to come out. That's just how human beings are, programming and all that stuff. But don't be the ego. Don't be the ego. You can talk on your brain with the ego. Just don't, when you're out in public or you're with people, don't express the ego, okay? Because you can use it to your advantage really well and get you out of situations. And voila, that's all I have. That's all I have for today, man. Y'all take care. Have a good one, and you guys bless up. I'll leave you guys an angel number today. I've been seeing this number like crazy, man, the past like couple days now. Like it's like every hour now too. So I'll give you the number 33. That's it. That's my number. So y'all take care. Have a good one, and bless up, man. I'm out.